We've got another great story to share with you today, an inspiring journey into local government leadership, because that's what we do here on the HaltingWinter Podcast. We tell the stories behind the titles, the unique paths into public service, and the moments that shape how these leaders show up, even when the work gets heavy. Every day, local government quietly makes modern life possible, and behind every service is a person doing work that often goes unseen. This is the HaltingWinter Podcast, and I'm Seth Winterhalter. Every week, I have the pleasure of sitting down with local government leaders from across the country that remind us where government really lives, locally, doing the work that truly matters. This is the work that builds belonging. Before we hear today's conversation, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Tyler Technologies has been exclusively serving the public sector since 1998, partnering with cities and counties to make their work more manageable, more connected, and more effective. From smarter budgeting to artificial intelligence, Tyler equips local governments with software and solutions that help leaders serve with clarity, efficiency, and impact. You can explore a variety of free resources at tylertech.com/winter. That's tylertech.com/winter. And if today's conversation resonates with you, I want to invite you to check out the Municipal Leadership Development Circle. It's a global community of local government leaders who are committed to growing together, supporting one another, and leading well in the middle of municipal pressure. You can learn more about the MLDC at haltingwinter.com/MLDC. That's haltingwinter.com/MLDC. And now, let's turn to today's conversation. My guest on the podcast today is Shaun Barnett, City Manager in Woodward, Oklahoma. Oh, and I hear it is already hot and boiling, over 100 degrees already. Shaun, welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on today.
Thank you, Seth. And yes, it is already warm in Oklahoma.
Well, for those who, I get the pleasure of seeing this on video. I'm sure that office has AC, but there's a fan behind you as well. We got to get all the help we can get, I'm sure, to stay cool in that environment.
Yeah, this in Oklahoma, especially where we're at in the northwest part of the state, we'll see extremely cold weather in the winter to get down to 0 and below at times. And in the summertime, we'll hit that 110 on a daily basis, very windy at times. And so, yeah, we're used to the ever-changing weather out here.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting as we talk about Woodward and just the interesting dynamics of, like you say, even temperature and what effect that has on the services of local gov. It's one of the things I think people just do not understand, that your pipes, your streets, those temperature fluctuations of that degree is just havoc. And so when you think, I don't want to pay taxes, it's like, well, do you like your roads? Like, do you want to go back to gravel? Because in the cost too of just paving or filling a pothole, people just don't realize, and again, with miles of road. And again, we're going to talk about Woodward's a unique place because you're the largest city in, I think, 9-10 counties, multiple states, even into Kansas. And so Texas is this unique, right by the panhandle. It's a unique reality there where you get a lot of people, I'm sure, coming in for services and for shopping and whatnot. And so anyway, I can't wait to dive into it all. So let's do what we do here before we unpack the professional realities of what's going on. Take us back to the beginning and tell us about where you were born and kind of the childhood that shaped you and launched you on this municipal journey.
Well, I was actually born in the Texas Panhandle, just not very far from here, about an hour's drive. When I was about 2 years old, I think my dad took a job change. We moved to Woodward, so I grew up in Woodward. And just the Woodward is like you said, a unique area where its location is. And grew up here, graduated high school, went to college. Thought that would be the time that I left the Woodward area, and actually came back and started a career. And have been here ever since through some changes. And I'm here today as the city manager, a journey that I never thought I would be on. So
It's so wild. I love these stories. Even before we hit the record button, I mentioned Bill Wagner in Arcola, Illinois, and similar. He's was their first city administrator. He's been their only city administrator over 20 years now, and just an incredible impact. And I think that's what we're going to unpack today. These places that people think about Oklahoma, they think about OKC, they think about maybe Edmonton, they think about the bigger cities. Tulsa and probably don't even think, that little panhandle up there. It's just kind of an interesting, like, what goes on over there, right? That's where aliens exist. And who knows, what's going on. And yet there's a Woodward that's a hub that probably it's always kind of interesting. I live in Olympia, which is the capital city of Washington State. And it's about an hour south of Seattle. But we serve such a rural area, all these multiple counties. And so if you come they look at Olympia like, oh, that's the big city. That's where city folk live, And I'm like, dude, this is like the tiniest, like, it's such a it doesn't feel urban to me after living in New York City and Seattle, right? And yet I'm sure Woodward kind of has some of these realities where, we got to go to Woodward. We got to go to the big city. And so let's go back to when you were a kid, because you end up at Woodward High School. Again, Woodward is what you know. Did you have any awareness of local gov growing up? Any awareness of, again, local gov so big, public works, emergency response, but any idea that local gov was behind the modern services that we took advantage of?
Yeah, not really. You saw the police officers, you saw the firemen, but really that was the only probably reality of what local government was. Grew up mainly here in town. However, my grandparents had a farm west of town. So I lived, did a lot of growing up out there, chores, working the farm, raised cattle and those things. But, never, guess you just don't ever imagine what government is. You utilize those things in town, such as the parks, activities. But as a child, and even as adults and the young adults, the reality of what is really behind those quality of life things that you have. And so, government was never a function. You knew about your national government and you knew a little bit about your state government, but most of the time you never knew about your local government.
And isn't it odd? That's the one that impacts you the most on a daily basis. And yet we just have no idea. One of the, always I get a chuckle out of so many people that come on the podcast, had a job for local gov growing up. Like they were an umpire at the ballpark or concession stands, or maybe a lifeguard at the city, pool. And they had no idea it was the city. Even though the city was on their paycheck, they're like, oh, I work for the ball field. Like it's just these connections we don't really realize. So as you're growing up, what were you interested in? Obviously, you're going to go to Northwestern Oklahoma State University. You're going to get a BS in criminal justice and law enforcement. Was that kind of the direction when Shaun was a kid, or was Shaun thinking about becoming an astronaut?
I think, as a kid growing up, my dad was in the welding construction business. I learned that trade pretty early. Of course, I mentioned we had the farm early. Really, when I went to college initially, it was for an accounting degree. I thought that's the direction I wanted to go, and things changed. And as I got older, the thoughts of what I wanted to do as a career changed. And so, growing up, it was I really felt that I would just continue doing the things that my dad and my granddad had taught me, and kind of into those fields. And so, for me in school, I took an interest to the math side of things, and working on a farm, bookkeeping, those things become interesting to me. And so I thought that's the direction I was going.
And so I love this. You're going one direction, but all of a sudden it changes. What changed that moved you to get a different degree?
So, through my high school days, I still thought that was the thing, but I really started grabbing a niche a little bit towards law enforcement. Early on, my Sunday school teacher was a state trooper, and he would come teach classes in his uniform, and it really got interesting. He started asking questions, but I didn't know if that's really what I was going to do. And then, as I started my college career under one field, the interest kept growing. And so that's when I changed and went into the criminal justice side.
I love this. I love, again, these little moments that we take for granted. We don't really realize the impact, right? Again, a Sunday school teacher that probably, and I'm sure showing up in the uniform was a little bit like, what is this? You're a kid and it's kind of like, wow, okay, this is interesting. And then you ask them some questions. Again, these little seeds, right? That are planted. And I just encourage anyone, if you're a leader, especially if you're a leader, you think, yes, formalized internships and all these things are awesome. And I'm a huge supporter of them. But you also just have opportunities, I think, to go into a classroom on a career day or just a unique opportunity to plant little seeds about what you do. And I think local gov needs to do that more because not enough people know about what we do. And it's amazing work. It's inspiring work. And there's a lot of opportunities for, I think, young people to find professions of meaning, purpose, and we need great people working on our local govs. Okay, so you get this degree, and then what happens? Now, I have on your career arc that you work for the Woodward County Sheriff's Department, but somewhere along the way, I heard that you worked for like the Parks Department for like 6 years, even before that. So, give us the story. How do you end up working for the city?
So, as I'm getting ready for college and I'm going through that, I actually end up getting married. And so I mentioned the Sunday school teacher that was a trooper. I actually married his youngest daughter. And so her entire family was law enforcement based. And so that continued that drive. But at that point, when I started with the Parks Department for the city of Woodward, I wasn't old enough quite yet to be an officer. I was commuting back and forth to Northwestern, so I was a student that drove in each day and took classes. And as being a young married couple, really needed a job, and I had an opportunity to start in the Parks Department and just maintaining the parks, mowing grass, doing those things, and I did that for almost 6 years. And that desire for law enforcement grew and grew through that period of time. And finally, that opportunity came, and I was able to go to the sheriff's office as a deputy to start that career.
I love it. How did you find out about the Parks Department and that job? Was that just in a want ad? How'd you come across that?
It's so really it was looking for jobs. I knew some of the people. Of course, being a hometown, you kind of know some of those people. And they were looking for someone full-time to come into the Parks Department. I applied and got that job, and that's how I started.
I love it. And as you're working there again, almost 6 years, that's a good chunk of time to really get to know. It's just interesting. I'm working on here in Thurston County, the county that Olympia's in. I've been talking with we had the Thurston County City Manager, Leonard Hernandez, on a few weeks ago. And we've been chatting about how do we just let people know what's going on in their county? How do we let them know about these cool parks and trails that we have access to out, Washington, a lot of outdoor people, especially during the few months we get sun in the summer. And so, but we got to let people know these opportunities. What was it like working for the Parks Department? Were you already aware of the parks? Did it give you maybe a greater appreciation for all the kind of park infrastructure that a city had? And how connected were you to the understanding then of municipality of like, oh, this is kind of what local government does? Or did that light bulb not come on quite fully during that?
I think it did. When I went into work, we knew that we have a very large community park, which is one I grew up in as a kid. So I knew that was there. But what I found out going for working was the fact that the city actually had about 11 residential parks, so little parks inside of residential areas. It wasn't a park in my residential area, so I didn't know those really existed that much. And, as you start working that job and understanding what the infrastructure of just the Parks Department and what that involves into the city government piece, and you start learning in that short 6 years, I become foreman for that department. And so you really start learning what the government entity piece of it is. And it was very interesting, something that was brand new to me, but I enjoyed it during those early years.
I love it. It's so fascinating too, right? Again, as you kind of go up in management, you start out and you're like, whoa, we got a lot of parks here. There's a lot more grass than I thought. But all of a sudden it's like, as you get put in higher positions, you start seeing, oh, there's budget here. That's right. We got a budget for not only people to mow the grass. You got to budget these lawnmowers. And these are like, it's not, I think that's the thing that people get confused. They're like, wow, why is the city got to pay so much for, a lawnmower doesn't cost that much. It's like, listen, Hank, like your lawnmower that you're going to use once every other week for, 6 months is not the industrial sized lawnmower that's got to take acres and acres, all the time. Just, we don't have the scope. And then there's parking lots and trash bins and, people that want to rent it out or reserve their, picnic table for their birthday party. There's a lot of things going on in just parks that people don't understand. We want the access. We want to be able to use it when we want. Someone's got to pull those triggers, right, to make it happen.
Absolutely. Each one of those parks have playground systems in them. We had a public pool and the maintenance and those things. We had ball fields and that were used for, as a kid, I played sports. And so the ball fields were maintained by the city. And so those were all areas that you knew were there, but you really didn't understand how they were managed and what pieces of that actually operated. And it was our municipal government, the one entity that most people don't pay much attention to.
Absolutely. And so you're going to do that for a few years, and then you get this opportunity to finally join the Woodward County Sheriff's Department. Tell us about that transition. And you're going to spend almost I think over a decade in law enforcement before you kind of turn and do this E911 director, which I want to get in because I think you kind of implemented a program there. So what was it like to serve as a captain?
Well, so, when I started still at the Parks Department, I became a reserve officer at the sheriff's office. And so that kind of got my feet into that. My supervisor at the park was actually a retired Woodward police officer. So again, some of those meeting people and learning. And then when that opening came up and I had a chance to go to the sheriff's office, I jumped on that chance and took that. And really enjoyed my career through that. I spent, like you said, almost a decade there with the sheriff's office, working in Woodward County, which included 4 little small communities outside of Woodward that we serviced. And so, that time was tremendous. I worked my way up through the ranks there as a captain whenever I chose to make a career change. But not necessarily leaving law enforcement, but making a career change. And so I got to experience a lot of things with the sheriff's office through investigations and then some areas to specialize in. And so that was a time that helped mold me in things for what I do today.
And I'm sure, I think people just don't, we just have, again, a limited understanding. We think sheriff and police, okay, well, you answering these calls. Those calls are so broad, so diverse. It's, the distraught person whose cat's stuck in the tree all the way to some really horrific things that you have to, that you're there for and that you are, right, the presence. And so it's such a, obviously that's why, I think we should value greatly our emergency response personnel and just the weight on them, the unique way they serve a community. And that's why I tie it in. This next thing you're going to do is really the infrastructure, the back end, the things that we don't really appreciate. We just had on, and who did I have on? I had on, my brain is blanking right now, but we had someone who did dispatch, oversaw dispatch. And we dove into that world. Cause again, you think about, like I just said, the police, the sheriffs, the people that come out and respond, but someone's got to orchestrate that. Someone's got to be that voice on the call and talk about, and it was one of the things that came up about the personnel that do this work, that you have, one of the challenges is you are dealing with heightened emotional realities because everyone from the chaos of horrific realities to the person whose cat's stuck in the tree, it's the same emotion. No one's calling 911 happy about life, right? They're all distraught about something. And to deal with that. And yet one of the things about dispatchers that they brought up was nothing's really ever finalized. Like you're just on from call to call to call to call. And then you would have to go, basically on your free time to go get any resolution to what happened with this, And so it's a unique work that I love that we're going to highlight here. Tell us about what this next kind of this section in your work life is.
Yeah. So I'm working through my career. Like I said, I was a captain, Woodward County residents voted to go ahead and move to an enhanced 911 system, a countywide system, which I thought was a great idea. We needed to upgrade our stuff. And at the time, our undersheriff was actually served on this board that was made up of city and county officials to develop 911 in a greater stance than what it had been in years past. He approached me and said, I really think this would be something that you can take from the ground up. Had to think about that a little bit. That meant coming off of the streets and doing some things. So I went ahead and through some conversations with my wife and just decided this was another opportunity for me to continue growing who I am and also help grow our community and do those things. So I stepped off and did that. Through that transition, the city of Woodward hosts that countywide 911 center. So I actually changed my commission from the Woodward County Sheriff's Office to the Woodward Police Department. And that would have been in 2006 when we began that. We had a small dispatch center and, understanding how to grow and develop a countywide system that now is more than just the Woodward Police Department and the Woodward Fire Department. This included the volunteer fire departments in the county, the sheriff's office, the small community to the east of us that also had a police department. How do we encompass all that into one center and run with that? And so from 2006 to 2015, I was the director for that and continued my law enforcement as well. And, just grew up from the ground up. And it was very interesting. I'd always been on the other side of the radio, but now I'm on the dispatch side of the radio. And how do we train these people to understand call taking and call handling? With my background, it also gave me a chance to explain what was happening on the other end of that radio. So when those dispatchers were sending, whether it was law enforcement or fire out to these scenes, what transpires on the other end and why it's so important to make sure the information that they're giving out is accurate as they can get it. And so, it kind of worked twofold. And I built that center for, 9 years and developed staff, developed an assistant director that eventually took over when I decided it was time. At this point, it'd been just a little over 20 years on the law enforcement side and really thought that it was time for me to look for something different. And so that center continued to grow, and it's still growing today with technology. It changes constantly. And so developing from a single computer and a microphone and one person in dispatch to today, we have 3 to 4 per shift and a big room of monitors and TVs and information. And so an incredible journey to change. And again, I think a lot of people that seek higher levels of responsibility through that, and that whole growth through government, so I've had both, started with the city, had time with the county, and then back with the city really gives you a lot of knowledge of what government is. And I've always felt that, as citizens, we should give back to the community when we can. And this was my opportunity to give back in these types of leadership roles.
One thing I've learned from hosting hundreds of conversations with local government leaders is this: the challenges never stop changing. So many conversations seem to come back to the same question. How do you keep moving your community forward when there's never enough time, money, people, or certainty? You're always looking for ways to work smarter, make better decisions with limited resources, and prepare for what's coming next, all while still delivering the services your residents count on every day. That is why I'm grateful for partners like Tyler Technologies. Tyler has put together 3 free ebooks specifically for local government leaders that I think are well worth your time. One explores how your team can use AI to eliminate repetitive work and improve your efficiency. Another highlights how cloud technology can help modernize your operations. And the third focuses on how your organization can remain resilient, even when things don't go according to plan. You can download all 3 ebooks for free, along with several other resources, all at tylertech.com/winter. Again, tylertech.com/winter. HaltingWinter. And if you're going to be attending the NACO annual conference, it's in New Orleans this July. Stop by booth number 231 and connect with the Tyler team. They would love to learn more about your community and the unique challenges that you are facing. While you're there, if you'd like to see how AI is being used in an actual government setting, make sure to attend the Technology Innovation Forum. It's featuring Fulton County and Tyler Technologies. You're going to hear how they are putting these tools to work in their day-to-day operations and what they're learning along the way. To learn more about AI that works to make your county or your city government far more efficient, visit tylertech.com/winter. Now, let's get back to the conversation. It's such a good point that, how do we, using the different skill sets you have. I love, again, your story, like, accounting and then into law enforcement. And now it seems like maybe you're using both of that in this, unique opportunity to build out this new program. Tell us, for our audience, I always like to encourage young people, and I always want to inform residents to have a greater appreciation for local gov, because dispatching is such I think, one of the shadow areas that doesn't get enough credit at all. What do you think would make, there may be young people listening to go, oh yeah, I'm kind of thinking about law enforcement, but I don't know if that's quite the fit. Who do you think would be a good fit? What kind of good skills and abilities make a good dispatcher that's kind of unique for that? And then what would you say to maybe the uninformed resident to help them understand that role a little bit better, since it is kind of unique?
Well, I think it really takes a special person. It's every day, every time that phone rings, it's chaos. How do you manage chaos? And not only chaos, but be able to remain calm and teach people to calm down. There's tricks to the trade with it. Someone that's screaming in the phone, we teach our dispatchers, talk softer. Typically, when you talk softer, people have to also be quiet to hear what you're saying. So just little techniques of that. And so really take somebody that can think quick on their feet and utilize the technology and the skill sets that are trained. And then communication. How do you communicate with people? And with that comes both control and compassion. And how do you use both of those in unique situations? On the law enforcement side, we've got to take control of situations and make sure safety is first. On the dispatch side, you also have to take control of the situation, because you need the pertinent information that you've got to give out to those responders. You have to be able to control the conversation. You got to control with questions and get proper answers. And so I think there's a multiple sides pieces to it. And then those people that are under distraught on that call, you've also got to be able to show a little bit of compassion. You've got to be able to understand the situation that they're in at that point in time. When that phone rings, it's usually the worst point in time for that individual. And so understanding that is your compassion coming out, and then your control part of it is you gathering the pertinent information that you need for the responders to be able to respond.
It just, as you say that, just the complexity there, like you say, of trying to control a situation so that you get the pertinent information so you can respond as quickly as possible, while also having compassion. Those two things probably play at each other, because to have compassion, you just want to, right? You want to let them speak, want to kind of sit in that moment, but that's not really getting to the pertinent information to help. So talk about a balancing act there of real skill, like you say.
And I think that, it helped me to coach them from being on the street as an officer, showing up, taking control, getting the situation safe and under control, but then being able to have the communication skills, the compassion, the ability to just have that conversation and talk to them and explain the situation, explain what you're doing. Dispatchers have to do some of those same things. And so I think just my background gave the opportunity to teach in a manner that maybe someone else can't teach because they didn't have that other experience before. So
So unique, so unique. So I think even during your time then as director, you start to dabble in this planning and communications executive. Tell us about this, like what's going on in the life, the mind of Shaun. That's kind of, you kind of mention it, kind of, you're thinking about the transition into something new, but what was that all about?
Well, so during that time, I knew that I was approaching a period of time that I was considering retirement out of that realm and doing something different. Through my law enforcement career, I owned and operated a welding construction business too. And so I had some opportunities that had ventured out that might be able to fulfill my career further. And as I visited with the city manager and the assistant city manager about some of my thoughts, they let me know that they were considering a third piece to their administration with the city, and thought that I would be a good fit with that. And that position would actually oversee public safety. So that was oversee fire, police, emergency management, and 911 to work with those department heads and those chiefs. And then also on the community development, someone to oversee the capital projects. And so this struck my interest a little bit, and we had a lot of conversation, and decided this was another opportunity for me to further my education, further my knowledge about, the municipal government, about what we do, how we handle things, and having a little bit of a construction background, overseeing, capital projects was something that I felt I could handle daily. And good relationship with the police chief at the time, and the fire chief, emergency management. And of course, the 911 was where I was coming out of, and I had trained my potentially replacement. And so just learning to coordinate all of our emergency services together. So this opportunity came about in 2015. And so I took that next leap of faith in municipal government.
It sounds like they were creating a second assistant city manager, but they didn't quite call it that yet. And so,
yeah, just to help diversify that management a little bit more.
Yeah. And so you do that for a couple of years, and then you become an assistant city manager. Is it one city manager, one assistant city manager? Tell us a little bit about the structure of Woodward, and did that change your role, or was that just a title and you still oversaw the same things?
So at the time, about a year and a half into that role, things were going well. Our assistant city manager stepped away from municipal government, went back into the private industry. And so conversation with the city manager, he's like, like to promote you up to assistant. You'll still take on the responsibilities you have now with additional responsibilities. So it went from a 2 to a 3 back to a 2. And so that's how I moved up, and just really at that point, really embracing what municipal government is, and how fully understanding the full operation of everything.
I love this. It seems like it wasn't really in your plan to become a city manager or even assistant city manager. You're just kind of saying yes to opportunities and kind of going, okay, well, I guess. And as you say yes, like all of a sudden these things open up. What was it like to then before you become the city manager, what was it like to become the assistant city manager and oversee? And again, it's one of these roles that I think people don't understand, because they don't even understand a city manager role usually. But the idea of, like there's so many departments, like if we just have silos, we have problems. The city has a problem. How do we keep them together? An ACM is a really unique position that can keep projects moving, that can help leaders make sure they're not connected with communication from the organization as a whole. There's a lot of moving parts with things I don't think we understand. Like you don't build a park just by Parks Department. Every department probably touches those things. Is that, what did it look like being an ACM in that role? And what are some of the cool things you think are important for us to understand about that role?
I'll step back just a minute before I get into that, but you talk about those opportunities. I'm one of those guys that I'm always looking for growth. And so those opportunities just kept happening. And a lot of that comes from commitment, hard work, and dedication to what you're doing. And so, I always tell any of our young people, young employees, people I know around the community, hard work, dedication to it is where you're going to grow and develop. And so as I moved into the ACM role, again, another step that I wasn't sure exactly what was happening, what it would be like, but it's really the operational manager. So that role really oversees all the departments we have, the functionality of those department heads, making sure that we put together game plans. We started developing 5-year plans on capital side, 5-year plans and operational changes, those types of things. So I started really implementing those. And so that ACM role is really that one position that oversees the daily operational pieces. And I report back to the manager, so he knows his job is really the higher level administration of everything. And so, I got to work every day with different department heads. If we're focused in parks or the streets or our water or our wastewater, wherever it might be that we've got issues or concerns or maybe projects coming in, and really got the function of being that administrator to make sure that those departments are moving in the right direction, completing the tasks, developing new projects or new tasks down the road, and being progressively thinking about, we can do this today, but what can we do tomorrow? And so I think that's the focus that the ACM, at least in Woodward, took. And that was the way my former ACM also handled things. And every community does it a little bit different. The responsibilities are a little bit different. And so just really focusing on making sure the operational standards of the city is being met, not just daily, but planning for the future as well.
I love that. Such a great description. And in light of that, then you're going to become the city manager in 2021. What a amazing journey from parks and mowing grass in the parks here now to leading the city. What I love the description you just gave of the ACM role. Give us the description of the CM role. What do you see as the difference of that, and how does that play out in Woodward?
As a city manager, I still have the oversight of operations. I have an ACM now, and that is his main role, just like it was for me. But as the city manager, it's above that. It's not just departmentals, but it's really the, watching the revenues, watching the expenditures, looking at those pieces, really working closely with my HR department and my clerk, the operations of the utilities. And, I deal a lot with the public. If they're not happy with something, that falls into my office. And, how do we deal with the public? How do we don't always make the public happy with our responses, but it is my goal as a city manager to make sure they at least understand why we gave them the response they received, whether it's what they wanted or not wanted. And so and then it's really about my community relation, being involved in the community. I attend as many community events that I can attend, to be present, be out in with the citizens. But then also I got involved with the civic club so that you can be those pieces. I do a lot of public speaking, whether that is the civic clubs. I do every so many months, I'm at the high school talking to different divisions of students. Had an opportunity. Northwestern Oklahoma State University now has a campus in Woodward off of their main campus, and all new freshmen have to go through a leadership class. And so I get the opportunity to do 1 or 2 of those classes every semester, come in as a guest speaker and talk about leadership and really what that's about. And so as a city manager, I'm in charge of the operations of the government, but I'm also responsible to the community. I'm responsible to the citizens to make sure that I'm out and about and speaking. And so I like to really talk about what we're doing, the exciting things, why we do it. And so, the role of a city manager is uniquely different than the ACM. And I really enjoyed my time as the ACM. And now I'm getting ready to start my 6th year as manager, really learning how to continue to grow as the manager. There's no steps above me if I want to, so I've reached the top. And so always having a focus for the future is really how I see it and how I look at it. And if we can do these great things today, what great things can we do tomorrow? And that's really been my focus. So
I love that. I love that you the way you see life, the way you have pursued discipline and impact in that in growth, new growth opportunities. And as you've done that, like you say, now you're in a position where you really there's no higher position to. Now it's just really about impact. And I think that's the beauty of really the journey of life is you get to, I always say your 20s are for failure. You should just be you should look for failure, which means you're looking for opportunities to do. You're not failing in like, stupid ways. You're failing because you're trying new things. You're trying to discover who you really are. So fail.
Taking risks.
Yeah, take those risks. And it's good to fail because you learn something. You learn something about yourself. You learn something about your abilities and maybe your dislikes. And then your 30s are when you start to hone. You start to go, okay, this is kind of who I am. These are kind of my interests. These are my skills as I become more self-aware. And you really start to become, you sort of kind of, you whittle down the head of the spearhead so it actually has a tip on it. And then in your 40s, I always say, now you should be creating some impact. Now you should know who you are. You should find a fit and you should be soaring. And then when you get to your late 40s, 50s, then you should be towards the top of whatever, whether that's a city manager, a director, whatever that is. So then it's not, yes, you need to keep the blade sharp, but now it's about incredible impact. Now the flourishing isn't going to necessarily be you. Now it's the city. And I think that's the beauty of local government is you go, Woodward there's so much present day realities to still manage and make sure and to deliver, but there's tomorrow and how, and especially now with AI and just kind of we're on this kind of culture change reality. And we'll probably get into that. Like you even mentioned, like I'm sure Woodward, what drove Woodward economically 50 years ago is totally different today, right? And guess what? With technology, I'm sure it's going to be different in 20 years, 30 years. And it's local gov that's got to tie those strings together to make sure that, like you say, like updated, how does that impact 911? How does that impact economic development? How does that impact housing, which is a huge thing right now? So
yeah, it impacts every element of community, and just the structure alone in the city over the years. I replaced an 18-year city manager. So he was here for 18 years when he retired. And just in those 18 years, he and I discussed just recently of what municipal government was like when he started versus what it is today. And, for probably previous decades before technology really picked in, government operated the same. You could consistently see, slow growth. Technology has really pushed government to be more proactive in moving things forward. And so I think you hit it. I think it's, government today is different. And really, I think any city or town that is living today and growing, it's because somebody has a forward-thinking mindset. We're doing some great things today, but how do we do great things tomorrow? And I think that is the key for a city. Cities that under leadership that maybe do not do that, you don't see growth. You see, I hate to use the word, but some stagnation in what those communities do. And, for me, being home, this is my hometown. I definitely don't want to see my hometown failure. I've got children that live here in town. I've got grandkids here in town. And so what we're building today is really for those next generations down the road.
See, I love that. That's the unique reality that it's a very small percentage, but those who have been on the podcast, the handful who have basically been born, raised in a place, and then they get the beautiful opportunity to serve in local government leadership, and especially those like yourself now as a city manager who has kids, who has grandkids. I mean, that's the cool thing about local gov too, is the people usually working in your organization are the people that live there. So everyone has this buy-in to, like, you all want to make the place healthy. And that is the danger, right? The tension as we kind of I want to dive into Woodward, the tension of always making sure that you hold on to some of the heritage and some of the history without making sure that it continues to develop. Because if you hold on to just the history, you're toast. You're going to stifle. Like you say, that's stagnation. That's not flourishing. So let's get into, so Woodward is it's upper northwest Oklahoma. It's about 2 hours, I think, northwest from Oklahoma City. Mm-hmm. It's in this unique, I think it's around 12,000 people, but it's that, again, that largest city in this big multi-county area. So you kind of this hub that you have your own airport. You have, maybe we'll get into the city-owned Crystal Beach Water Park, which is like the Wikipedia thing. It says, so tell us about it. Tell us about even, maybe start by this. How big was Woodward when you were a kid? And what do you think has changed the most as you kind of look at the map now?
So as a kid growing up, Woodward was probably in that 10,000 range. Woodward is really based off agriculture and then the oil and gas industry. And so one of the things with Woodward was really a roller coaster ride for a long time. When oil and gas was up, Woodward grew, things developed. And when those failures hit, which we see them every so often, people would move out because they're chasing those jobs. The economy goes down, growth stops. And so Woodward just for decades just followed that roller coaster of the oil and gas industry. Now we still have it today, but we've been able to diversify that. And so we always want to hold on to those pieces that you have. Agriculture, like you said, in Northwest Oklahoma, that's a very large agricultural area. We do call ourselves a hub city. Today, we're sitting somewhere between 12 and 13,000 people, but we serve about 75,000 people. You talked about the area around us. The closest community to our size or larger is about 90 miles away. And so workforce, quality of life, entertainment, shopping reaches into the Texas Panhandle, Southwest Kansas, and then the northwest part of Oklahoma. And so, we look small, we service large. And so having those things here, opening up those new retail places, we've done a couple of new ones just recently, where people are not having to travel an hour and a half, 2 hours to do some of the little things. And so Woodward has continued push to how do we have those things here in town? How do we have those pieces? We can't have everything. And so it's still an easy drive, 2 hours to Oklahoma City if that's what you need to do. But our goal was to provide those essential pieces here, add in those extras that people want. And it's not just for those, for the city itself. We have employees that might drive 30, 45 minutes to come to work every day. They choose to live out on, maybe it's the family farm, or maybe it's one of those small communities that are really don't have opportunities there. And so Woodward has really become that focus for the Northwest area.
I have this unique pleasure, this unique opportunity to meet with thousands of local government leaders from across the nation every year through conferences and workshops and the podcast. Just these interviews, these conversations are just so insightful. And one of the things I have learned about local government leaders is this: the best leaders are lifelong learners, not because they have all the answers. It's because they understand that leadership, that journey of leadership, is never finished. Every challenge, every difficult conversation, every budget season, every organizational change or disruption is another opportunity to grow. That's why this summer we're doing something different inside the Municipal Leadership Development Circle. We're launching a special summer series called Stories That Shape Leaders. You know that every week I take a best-selling book, usually a business book, and we break down its insights and apply them to local gov. This summer, we're taking biographies, memoirs, timeless leadership books that don't necessarily fall into those typical business, culture, strategy kind of genre. And we're going to explore the lives, the decisions, the failures, challenges, the lessons of leaders who navigated incredible adversity, who had to build trust when hope was fleeting, who inspired others not only to dream, but to take action, and who left a lasting impact. Leadership isn't shaped just through strategies and frameworks alone. It is shaped through stories. Stories that challenge assumptions, stories that expand our perspective, stories that help us become the leaders our communities need us to be. When you join the MLDC, you unlock the entire summer series, but you unlock even more. You unlock the weekly leadership content, the live mastermind sessions, the nationwide community of local government leaders, and all the MLDC resources, not just for the summer, but for the rest of 2026. If you are looking for a place to continue growing this summer while connecting with leaders who understand the unique challenges of local government, I would love to invite you to join us. Learn more at haltingwinter.com/MLDC or simply use the link in the show notes. Now, back to the conversation. I love how, again, it's a city that seems to be mindful of its place and its reach. And I think that's where you're seeing more and more. I'm hearing more and more as I meet with city managers from across the nation. The cities have to work together, like the even like you said. I think the 911, that whole project was about going, hey, how can we work? How can we be on the same page? Like, we don't need to be on separate pages. And I think even for economic development, like when you get a Sam's Club or a Costco, that's a win for everyone in the area because everyone can use that resource. Talk about the pressure of being a hub city, though, of trying to figure out, like, again, when you're 15,000 people and those residents go, yeah, we want our potholes fixed, we want this, but then 75,000 people are coming in to, use the resources and enjoy life. What does that look like, trying to be mindful of the economic development it takes to resource and pay for all those people coming in?
Well, I think it takes a couple of different avenues that you have to take. One, we went and invested in a comprehensive plan for the future for the city. What are some of the needs? What are things that it involved leadership groups, it involved citizens groups? What are some of the things that Woodward needs? Asking those questions, getting that input. And with the idea that we can't do that now, but how do we grow towards that? So you have to have that side of it first. The other side of it is you also have to understand what the infrastructure we currently have. How do you grow that? How do you expand that so that if growth comes, you're ready for it? And so you have two pieces to that. I think it's challenging, but yet, and I'm going to back up just a little bit. Oklahoma is a little bit unique is that we're the only state that municipal government revenues come from sales tax and then the utilities they provide. We don't get property tax. We don't get anything else. It's strictly sales tax.
Wow.
And so that really makes it tight. If the economy's going down, sales tax goes down, the revenues to the city goes down, and what we can do gets smaller. And so having this unique hub city, cities that in Oklahoma that only rely on the citizens that live in their community to produce those sales tax dollars can't grow. And so if we're utilizing these 62,000 extra people coming into town to spend their dollars into our community, then that allows us to, okay, how do we use those funds to move forward? You're right. A city our size, having that many people come in, it's wear and tear on our streets. It's we have 5 highways that all merge into the center of town and disperse. So you have tons of truck traffic. And how do you provide things in those routes that come into town that makes people want to stop? A large truck stop or a large quick stop where people can stop and get refreshments. Fast food places, restaurants. How do we get our shopping areas along those corridors? And so you really take that focus of okay, these are what we need in our community for our citizens to have and to cherish and to expand. But we need these pieces for those inflows, that influx of people, whether they're just traveling through or they're actually coming here to do something in our city. What are those needs? And so to me, it's a unique setting that we as a city have to focus on, not just our citizens, but those that are coming in and through our community on a daily basis.
It's such a unique puzzle. I think, when I was an older kid, they came out with those 3D puzzles and they were like, you build the castle and whatever. And it was like, whoa, this new puzzle. And I often think that's like local gov. Like you have to deal with present day realities. And that's a puzzle. It's a 1,000-piece puzzle by itself. But then you throw in the 3D element of trying to have to plan for the future. And like, yeah, where are we putting commercial? Okay, if we put that quick stop there, what else are we putting there? Because if you just kind of do it project by project, you get this weird quilt that's like, what in the world? Someone threw up on this thing. Like, it's not a pattern, right? And so just like you said, the comprehensive plan, I just appreciate this so much, these aspects of local gov that we just don't really know about, all the work that goes behind the scenes.
When you look at it, I mean, one things that we've been doing just recently is really focusing on our zoning for residential, commercial, industrial. How do those zones work? Are they zoned in a manner that would be attractive where someone could come in and not have to go through the hassle of trying to get rezoned and those pieces? How can we prepare for someone to come in and find those properties already they're in the proper zone? I think those are pieces sometimes we forget about as cities. We forget to look at, just because it's always been that way doesn't mean it should continue to be that way. Recently the city acquired a piece of property that had one of our old hospitals that was just crumbling to the ground. And we were able to acquire that, level that out, and working on a plan to create additional residential area. And so, how do you continue to plan for the future? Every community has those areas of town that are a little bit dilapidated. How do you focus in those? How do you clean those up? How does the development go? And so really, on a daily basis, you're almost thinking, okay, what's next? What's that next piece? But if you don't put a plan together of what your ultimate goals are, and they can be sky high, it doesn't matter. But if you don't have it, you never have anything to work towards. So
I love your philosophy. It seems like you are very, it's kind of like a basketball player that, you have to have a foot planted, your pivot foot, but you got to be moving. You got to kind of be looking for where are we going to move? Or else if you just kind of stand flat footed on both feet, you're really not taking advantage of the opportunities. And if an opportunity comes, you're probably going to miss it because you don't have any momentum. And so I love that aspect of your philosophy. Tell us when you look kind of at the present, but also the future reality, especially in all that we talked about, kind of the change that's happening right now, just in culture and in development. What do you think are the challenges that you're kind of seeing in Woodward and local gov? What are the challenges and what are the opportunities? What are you excited about?
As far as challenges, like I said, as we try to maybe recruit that next retailer, that next business that provides jobs, is how do we sell our community not to be a little rural community? We've talked to different developers and different business people and are like, well, Woodward really just doesn't have the population. We don't think that would support our workforce. And so we've actively focused on, we've done the numbers, we've done the study. It's not who lives here, it's who lives around us. And because of that, we've been able to successfully land some new retail places. We have a new business that come in that is starting slow, but has a potential of adding 50 jobs. And so you got to have the jobs in your community to do the other things. And so, I think those are some of our challenges that we'll always face just because of our geographical location, but we have to be loud out there. They have to hear from us. And so, too many times I think people forget to talk about what we really have and what we can do. And so I really encourage our staff, when people ask, this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it and this is how we do it. And I think it can't just always come from me as the manager. The staff has to buy into that same philosophy. And it really comes from our leadership team, which is all those department heads. If we don't all speak the same language, then you have failures. And so really focusing in that. As far as the bright things, we think that Woodward has opportunity. We've tried to reduce some of the red tape for a new business to come in. Really encouraging people that want to make a change. Maybe they don't want to be in California anymore. They want to be in the Midwest and they work from home. What opportunities do they have here to be able to work from home and do those things? And I think it's important to show what we can provide. And so, one of the things that we just recently did, and they said, well, does Woodward want to be the next big city? No, we're not. We just want to create opportunities. A lot of people think they've lost the opportunity to change or do something different. And we think Woodward can provide those opportunities, and we're a community that's going to support you. And I think that's really key, whether you're relocating a business or maybe you work from home and you're looking for a lifestyle that's a little bit slower, but yet has the amenities that you're wanting. You want to raise a family and those pieces. And I think Woodward has done a tremendous job with our leaders. So I meet on a regular basis with our school superintendent, our CEO at the hospital, our career tech superintendent, our county commissioners, and those county leaders. And if we can all work together and have some of the same visions, then you can have great success. The city itself can't be successful by itself without those outside partnerships. And so it's extremely important that administrators can communicate and we can talk, and the school could say, hey, this is some of our plans for the future. We're going to be doing some bonds to build this or do that. Same way with our career tech. Our career tech trains a lot of our workforce in a lot of these private industries, whether it's in oil and gas or in the wind industry. They have training programs there to encourage kids to get into that field. And so I think it's, Woodward has, I'm sure other cities are doing it, but we can't be successful if we don't work together. It's not just the city manager. It takes everybody.
So good. So good. One of the things, well, you've highlighted a couple of things I want to just highlight again, but it's that the last thing you just said, it's the working together. People don't realize, again, it's schools, it's the hospital, it's the private sector and the public sector. It's all working together. But that's the one thing I think it seems like you've done the work to clearly identify what is Woodward. And I want to encourage, I think that's the issue of cities, is they're kind of chasing the pressure of what they feel like they should be, instead of just going, this is just who we are. And we're not going to apologize for it. And we're not going to pretend that we're something else. This is who we are. And and then it allows everyone to go, oh, okay, that's what we're rowing towards. And so that's that's the story we can tell. And I think, like you said, especially local gov has struggled to tell a captivating story. And that's not because they're bad storytellers. It's because I think they get into the weeds of things that regular people don't understand, and they don't know. They're stuck maybe in the past. They're stuck trying to be something that they can't be in the future. And so I think doing that work, it's not just a comprehensive plan. It's going, okay, what does this tell about us? What does this say about who Woodward is, who we want to be, what's really our unique identifiers? I think it's super important. It seems like you guys are doing.
I think one of the things too that managers sometimes struggle with or have failures in is their counsel. And when I actually interviewed for this job, I was very upfront with, if you don't want change, I'm not the person to come in. I want Woodward to be successful, and I want you to be on board with continuing to move forward. We love our history. Because we're so unique, we do things that other cities don't do. We have an actual museum belongs to the city. The library belongs to the city. The airport belongs to the city. I have a tourism department to promote tourism in the area. And so we have those things. And if we want to hang on to that history, we want to showcase our history. It's what built us, but it's not what's going to build tomorrow. And we'll build new history of how we get there tomorrow. And we need to showcase those pieces as well. And so having that council that agrees that we have to continue to move forward is key. So many places struggle with that relationship. And that's why we see managers not being successful or not being there very long. And so when I look at people that ask me, well, why do you do that? Why are you a city manager? And I think I tell people all the time, a successful community has to have someone that is passionate about the community and about where the community is going. And I feel that I can bring that to the table and live on that stance every day in the decisions that we make.
That's what a powerful visualization to take your council to your museum and be like, we look back at our past and we go, man, look at those cool things they did. But now the temptation is, like you said, to just be stagnant. But to go, if people come into this museum 40 years from now, they're just going to see a blank. What would we do? We didn't do anything. And the reality is the reason we look back and go, man, how cool is it? Like what we did back then. At the moment, those people were taking big risks, and they were
visionary. They were looking at the vision of what, if we do this, what do we get out of it? And if they wouldn't have done that, we wouldn't have that history today.
Exactly.
So, and extremely important.
And I'm sure they pissed off plenty of people when they were doing it. They didn't have 100%. That's always the thing. We look back at history and go, oh, we do cute movies about it. Everyone wins, right? And it's like, but in the middle of it, that's not the way it was.
Yeah. I think, speaking of movies, you see movies about police and fire and different things. You don't see movies about municipal government. Everyone doesn't think of what those roles are, but really it is so important. And, I have staff that someday might be in my chair. I don't know, but the encouraging them of the importance of what they do today is going to really build what opportunities come tomorrow. And I feel blessed to have had opportunities along the road, even in a path I never thought would be in the horizon, and being able to do it today is rewarding. It has its challenges. Don't get me wrong. There's some days you wonder why I do this, but the rewards outweigh that quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, how cool is that to think there could be a young guy mowing the grass right now that could one day be the city manager? Oh, how cool is that story?
Yeah. And I think we have some great employees that have potential to do great things if they so choose to, like we said earlier, take some of those risks and step out on a limb and really just focus on how or what they can do to make Woodward, wherever they might end up at, better.
Oh, it's so good. I want to ask you one final question. Be mindful of your time today. Just thank you for sharing all this with us. You've mentioned it throughout the story, and especially now when you kind of gave the job description of a city manager. It's a role that is so unique. It's not like any other role in the world of anything. Who else deals with electeds? Who deals with staff it's department directors and just different departments and areas for silo and trying to build collaboration. And then you have residents, and it's not like all your residents think the same. They all have their wants and their desires. It's a really unique role that really doesn't shut off. I was a pastor for a number of years, and I find there's a symmetry between that pastoral life and a city manager life, because I never got to go to the gym and just be Seth. Like anyone would go, oh, hey, pastor, let me tell you my woes. You got to be a counselor like every turn. Same thing as city manager, right? If they see you, you're free picking on to tell you about the pothole that's in front of my house or the light that's not working or whatever it is. How do you, I always say there's no such thing as work-life balance. That's BS. There's just intentionality. You got to intentionally care about what's important to you. Yes, work's important, but work will always be there. And work, a city never sleeps. There's always projects. There's always. How do you shut off and make sure that Shaun is personally healthy, that the other aspects of your life, your relationships, how do you find rest and rejuvenation?
I think there's maybe a couple answers here, and I'm going to give you both. First of all, it's my wife. Having that support. My wife and my mother were both kind of excited when I decided to retire out of law enforcement. That unknowing every day whether I would come home or not, just because of the risks that you took. That career was rewarding. And then I kind of moved up in administration, and that was okay. But whenever I met with my city manager at the time, and he says, look, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be making an announcement of my retirement, and I really think you should apply for this job. Went home and had that talk with my wife, and my wife just looked at me and like, is that what you really want to do? And we had those conversations, but when we both agreed, and that's the key for me, when we agreed that this was the opportunity I needed to take, she supports me in everything, and like you said, if I'm out in the public, if we want to go have dinner, it was hard the first few times. She's used to it now. she'll just eat her dinner. They come to the table, they got to ask me something about the city. And I usually give them a response. It doesn't matter where we're at, if we're at the ball fields, watching my grandkids, or if it's, if we're at Walmart just shopping, I get approached on a regular basis. So making sure that she agreed with me when I took that step and having that support there. The other piece of it is really knowing I'd been in the organization for several years and knew a lot of the people, and immediately knew when I put my name in the hat for that position that a lot of those department heads and those directors gave me support immediately. And having that from that base that I'm going to be dealing with every day, didn't get them all. Don't worry. I have employees who are just like citizens. Not everybody agrees, but having that support come in. And then, developing my staff, I had to find an assistant city manager, and it didn't come internally. I brought someone from the outside that was in a community much smaller than Woodward. He was the city manager of that little community. And again, that was his hometown. And so he knew the hometown piece, and we were good friends, and was able to bring him over. Building that team is what continues to support me every day, because every day is a challenge. There's something new that pops up. But, I really think that's what encourages me to continue doing what I do. It also gives me the chance in this. I'm involved around the state with different organizations that support municipal government, and sit on several different boards. But having those pieces in place gives me an opportunity also talk to other managers. Some of them are mentors to me, and some of them now I'm becoming mentors for them. And so giving back what people have given me is always extremely important. And having that opportunity to pass on my knowledge, my experience, encourage people that would consider municipal government to have those conversations, and encourage them to, like anything, buy in 100%. If you're going to do it right and be committed to it. And so, for me, I wasn't sure if I was making the right step to take this position, but today I can tell you, the rewards outweigh the negative pieces of it.
I love it. What a great story. And I love that you mentioned the associations. Obviously the City Management Association of Oklahoma is, these associations are just vital for really this role too, because what I find, when I was a pastor, I could go to a pastor's luncheon because there's a church on every corner, right? And we can get together and we can vent and we can, talk about the woes and share ideas and brainstorm. You're the only city manager in Woodward. It's not like if you go to a forum, a luncheon, it's yourself and you.
I'm the only one that manages a city like this for miles.
Yeah.
It's a long ways away. Technology allows us to have these types of conversations and those things, but being involved in those organizational groups around the state, I serve on multiple boards, recently got put on a couple new boards, but having that interaction and meeting those people, whether they are coming to a close of their career or just starting their career, and having those conversations and taking that knowledge and that information. I go to trainings on a regular basis. I've taught classes through my law enforcement career as an instructor. Today, I encourage a lot of classes. I teach at the Oklahoma Municipal League. I've taught classes there, whether it's in leadership and development and some of those pieces. I teach my directors. I've got 16 of them that oversee multiple areas of the city. And I try to build what I've learned through my leadership training. I'm a graduate of the ICMA High Performance Leadership Academy, very intense, almost a year-long academy. Spent the year through the Leadership Oklahoma Academy, and those pieces to build those skill sets that you need to be in these roles, and pass that down to my staff and really encourage them. And they've had the opportunity over the last 2 years to each of them put together a little 30-minute presentation on what leadership means to them, and give that to make that presentation in front of the other directors. Developing people is what it's about. If I can develop the people we have and they understand the leadership pieces, it's unlimited to what this organization can do for this community.
I love it. Oh, Shaun Barnett, what a story. What a great insights today. And I'm glad your leadership journey isn't done yet. You got more years to come. And I love that too. It's not just about, again, being a part of that to learn and to grow. It's about mentorship. And it seems like that's where, it's always cool to see that kind of movement to where you're not just, getting, you're pouring out and you're starting to see that shape lives.
Yeah. And I know where I'm at in my career life. I know that I'm on the far end, getting closer and closer to retirement and those things, that if I'm able to lead and develop those below me now, the future is still bright and they can continue to move forward, because I tell them every day, life is one day at a time. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring us. We don't know, I always tell them we all have an expiration date and we don't know what that date is. So we need to be prepared, whether that's in our work life, in our profession, and in our home life and our family. And so understanding the two, you asked the question earlier, how do you separate it? It's my family. It's my kids and my grandkids, and those pieces, they're there. Got to have those. It's the other pieces of life. And when you can live every day knowing that you're not promised tomorrow, we got to do what we can do today to be successful and move forward and prepare those that are with us to continue the journey. Doesn't have to be like I would do it, but we be able to continue that journey in the right direction. So
so good. So good, man. Thank you, Shaun, for sharing again, your life, your leadership journey, your insights. A fabulous story.
I appreciate the opportunity, Seth. And it was great having this conversation.
The stories we share here on the Halting Winter Podcast remind us where government really lives, locally, right here in our cities, our counties, the communities that shape our everyday life. If today's conversation resonated with you, please subscribe and share the episode to help these stories reach others. I'm Seth Winterhalter. You can find me at HaltingWinter.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.